Hi, everybody. My name is Ali Mushtaq. I am Mr. Long Beach Leather 2016. I am also a member of the Leather BDSM community. And today we're going to talk about questions about bullying and harassment within the leather community. Now, it's interesting because leather is predicated upon the idea of trust. And to do anything within the realm of leather and BDSM assumes that we trust other individuals to sort of engage in particular kinds of play and to engage in basically this idea of camaraderie. But we feel that, there are aspects where this trust can be possibly violated. And in fact, there are aspects of bullying and harassment that continue to play a role in the way that we form our community that prevent us actually from becoming closer to one another. And so this is actually interesting because like when I started thinking about people that could possibly come to this panel, like it was really hard generating this list of small individuals because we were worried essentially about questions about harassment, questions about bullying, being able to like be like, oh, well, like let's go back to somebody and then come back with like other responses and stuff like that. And it was just really upsetting. So yeah, we do acknowledge that this panel could be even more inclusive than at present. And we look to further our representation of various identities, including gendered minorities. It's just, again, we're looking at the notion of trust. And right now, I think for me, I can only speak for myself, that it's really hard for me to extend that level of trust to be on a panel like this because we are talking about such sensitive topics. So I just want to make that clear before we begin. With that said, I'd like for our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves. And the order of my screen, I will call on you and feel free to introduce yourself. Alexandra, would you like to share?
Hello, everyone. I'm Alexandra St.James Gray. I am Miss Iowa Leather 2017. I am the third African-American woman to hold the title and the first trans woman to ever hold the title. I've been around a while. My pronouns obviously are she, her, hers. Also, your grace and your majesty are also very welcome as well, for I also have been Empress 3, 7, and 8 of the Imperial Court of Chicago. So I'm here to lend an ear, have some fun, and let's just have a good time, shall we?
Thank you. Thank you. Shadi, would you like to go?
Hello, everyone. I'm Shadi Baitis. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I have been a member of the Leather King community for a couple of decades, but picked it up a bit about 7 years ago. 6 years ago, I acquired the title of Illinois Leather Star. It was an honor and privilege to serve, and also sometimes a bit trying at times, entering into a very cis-het community, whether or not they want to admit that there's a lot of heterosexual elements or not, and gender issues. And not only that, as I extended into the pup community and other kink communities, I saw that the problem continued to exist. So I hope that this discussion will address some of that and that people will feel safe and realize they're not alone.
Thank you so much, Shadi. Preston, would you like to go?
Sure. Very tough acts to follow. It's a real pleasure to be here on this panel with three of my favorite people in the entire kink community. Looking forward to seeing all three of you in person again very soon, I hope. My name is Preston Wex So. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm currently based here on Lenape land in New York City. I am the first Asian international fetish title holder and the first Mr. International Rubber of Color, as well as the Mr. New England Rubber 2016. It's been a long time. I'm also the co-founder of the first two rubber events in Latin America, Mr. Rubber Mexico and Mr. Rubber Brazil. And I'm also the founder of the Asian Leather and Kink Alliance, which is an anti-racist grassroots collective open to all genders, all sexualities for folks of Asian heritage in the kink and fetish community. You can find out more information about me at my website, mirubberxx.com. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Preston. And we will have a link to everybody's bio in the description below. So feel free to check out our panelists there as well. So anyway, so let's start light. You know, I want to keep this sort of linear conversational arc, and I want to kind of create show folks that, like, look, you know, a lot of us are coming to the leather world that are, you know, we're doing this because we like this, right? So I'd like you to share your story about how you first briefly or how you first came into the leather world, okay? And then feel free to talk about like what drew you in. So Alex, would you like to go?
So I was a little baby femboy queen running around Chicago hosting jockstrap auctions. So I've always said that my sort of enter into the leather community sort of happened porn adjacent. I was one of the people who would get called a lot when there were porn giveaways and things like that, hosting events in Chicago. And so I was the girl who hosted jock auctions and porn giveaways. And hey, seeing a boy chained to a wall is kind of hot. Not gonna lie about it. Eventually that evolved into being called to host various leather events. And as I discovered myself and sort of discovered that fun side of me, there wasn't a place for me. You know, I did not see trans women in leather. I did not see a great deal of trans women in kink. No, let me rephrase that. I didn't see Black trans women in kink and in leather. And as things evolved, I found myself literally being the entertainment at a lot of kink events where I was the MC or I was performing. And so there is that sort of style in my performance when I'm doing certain things that I always say is a little bit tawdry, a little bit bawdy, kind of, you know, a little bit risque. I love the play of double entendre. There's something about for me being in a pair of 6-inch stilettos and a corset, where for me it's really, really hot. But if you're somebody into ultimate submission, oh look, there she is and she can't get away. You know, so it's, you know, and now when I realized and when I decided to run for Miss Iowa Leather, rules had to be changed because there wasn't, you know, at that time it was like, okay, we know that this is what she wants to do. And how do we make this possible? So I did it and I'm happy about it. So it's one of those things where you learn to like it and, you know, you enjoy what you're doing. I mean, we all enjoy the sexy side of leather and the sexy side of rubber and the sexy side of kink, but it's also just, baby, live your best life, live in bliss and live your best life. And, you know, that's what it is.
Thank you. Thank you. Shadi, go ahead.
So I came into it at a very, very weird time in American history where I turned 21 at the same time about 9/11 happened. So it was a very, very strange shift in the gay community in that, like, you had some Arabs who were generally the model minority, like, and viewed in that complex, all of a sudden shifting to the hated minority. And what that engendered was going ahead and creating a really strong fetish for Arab Americans, Mid-Eastern people. And what I ended up seeing is a lot of people focusing on that. They wanted to start speaking to them Arabic, putting them down in Arabic, all sorts of really dominant alpha things, which I enjoy. But I don't enjoy being fetishized for them. However, at that time, that's the only way I could see any sort of gatekeeper letting me into the community. And so I played into it. And it was very easy to play into it. And I didn't realize until several years later that not only was I not respecting myself, I was disrespecting everyone else who was trying to come into the community coming from my own background. And from that point, I tried to speak my truth, speak up, come out from the back of the picture, you know, where they want to put us to say that they have us, but they don't want to open our mouths. And that's where the bullying began. As soon as you start speaking your truth, trying to make things better, trying to change and broaden inclusivity, that's when we saw a lot of stuff out. And I hope with discussions like this, we can go ahead and try to analyze what exactly is causing it and how do we fix it.
Thank you, Preston.
Sure. Well, you know, I can definitely say from the bottom of my heart that, you know, I've definitely had a lot of very similar experiences, I think, to all three of you, but also very different experiences. You know, I came to the kink community when I was just entering college, and a lot of the media and a lot of the things, just to kind of, you know, go back to what Shadi was saying about some of the ways in which certain standards of beauty or certain expectations that revolve around white supremacist notions of who we're meant to represent in terms of our races and who we're supposed to emulate in terms of our races, because of the ways in which, you know, these dehumanizing tendencies around fetishization and ostracization have really come to really deeply affect and color our lived experiences. I still remember to this day, you know, I grew up in a very conservative, predominantly white, middle American state. I'm originally from Colorado, and I grew up in Colorado Springs, which is the evangelical capital of the United States. And, you know, there was one single gay club there, and it was called, I think it was called Cowboys. And you can imagine the kind of environment that was. And to be honest, when I was growing up as a teenager and when I was getting into high school and kind of exploring my fetish, which was, you know, predominantly about rubber and predominantly about sort of tight-fitting gear and that sort of thing, I really didn't realize the depths of what is happening and what is involved in the racism that is really kind of brutal in the kink community and in the queer community. When I first got to college, for example, I went to school in Boston, and Boston is still obviously a very racist city. And one of the things I discovered when I was finally able to kind of come out of my shell and start to explore some of these things in person with other people is that I was shunned at the gay bars. I was shunned at some of these events, and I was shunned on the apps. I mean, Recon, Gear Fetish back in those days, as well as on Grindr. And it was a really rude awakening for me. I think a lot of, I think all of us as people of color, and especially when you come from an environment where you've always been seen as somebody who's different, where you're always seen as somebody who's not quite American or not quite somebody who fits in. It's very challenging because you realize that there's no escape, right? It's pernicious, and it even pervades into all of the things that happen within the kink community and the queer community. I was very lucky though, because I found two communities that were very welcoming and very accepting. The first was Harvard College Munch, which was the BDSM student group at my university. We had a really diverse range of folks in that group that were really amazing in terms of reflecting the richness of what the kink community actually is supposed to be and who it's actually supposed to be about. The second was, and this is where, you know, a lot of people ask me, how can I become a better ally? How can I become, you know, somebody who is actually supportive meaningfully of people of color, of trans folks, of people who you know, are disabled in the community? How can I actually be more supportive? And one of those people was actually Jason Lynch, who was Mr. International Rubber 2012, I believe. Also was Mr. England Rubber. I still remember it like it